guys, welcome back to my channel and to a brand new video. Today we are going to be talking about my book recommendations for autumn/fall if you're American. So I have like a wide variety here of books that I want to show you today. Some of them are classics, some of them are fantasy, some of them are horror. It's like anything I think you should be reading in autumn. And I feel like it would suit everybody, or there's something for everybody because of how many genres there are. So I have 10 books to show you today and tell you why I think each one should be read in autumn. By you, if you have not already read them, that is. The first book that I would definitely recommend for autumn or winter, but I think it's more autumn because The Forest, is The Watchers by A.M Shine. This is a horror novel. We follow Mina, who has her car break down in the middle of this woodland, and when she's out walking she finds a cabin and a woman is standing there screaming at her to hurry up and come in before she shuts the door, and she's like, what's happening? But she can hear noises of animals, so she does. Then when she gets in, she finds anybody who's in this forest never gets to leave, and every night the watchers hunt for them, and so they must stay in the cabin in the night, and in the day they can go out and forage, but they must come back. This was so scary. In the first half, I will admit, it is a bit boring and I almost DNF'd. I'm so glad I didn't. This is amazing. It could be read in autumn or winter. The reason I say autumn is because this was so scary I couldn't really do much in the dark, and obviously in the winter there's too much dark. So I feel like autumn is spooky enough, but not too spooky. It's not so spooky that the darkness will leave you paralysed in fear, which it did when I read it in winter last year. So yes, and the descriptions of the trees, and it just feels very autumnal to me. I like a bit of horror in autumn, so this works very, very well. This is a very good book. The end of this is very ambiguous. It's very shocking. I did love the end, but yeah. Not much to say on this one, and it's probably not the best one to have started with because I don't really have any reasons for why autumnal. But I definitely recommend you check this out nonetheless. Next is one I'm pretty sure everybody who I show this to is going to have read, but I'm going to show it anyway. It's The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a fantasy story. So we follow Jude, who gets kidnapped by a fairy, and taken to the world of fairy or fairy. I don't know how to say it. I'm going to say fairy. And there she meets the worst person in the world, Prince Carden, and he is shockingly very cruel. I know, wow. And then you follow 3 books. I'm kind of recommending the whole series here. You follow the 3 books where Jude kind of tries to find her place in fairy. So in a very interesting story, the reason I think that this is again very autumnal is forest vibes. The world of fairy is a forest. It is literally a forest over the sea, hidden from the humans. And when you're just listening to the descriptions of the scent of pine and she's crunching on the twigs as she walks, there's just something about that is so autumnal and so perfect. There's like balls and galas, and I don't know, for me that is not a summer read, that is not a spring read. It could be a winter at a push, but that is an autumnal read to me. I absolutely love this series. I love having something to dive into on those colder evenings. And this is one of those books, or one of those series, to be honest, that I just think is the perfect recommendation for autumn. And if you haven't read it by some chance yet and you are somewhat interested, I would 100% recommend this. It is so, so good. Next we have some mysteries, and they are together, so I may as well talk about them consecutively. First of all, we have the Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Again, I'm recommending the entire series. This is so good, and I think everybody's talking about this right now because of the release of The Final Gambit that just came out. But this is so interesting, and obviously this is autumnal because of Knives Out. It is the exact same as Knives Out, and Knives Out is my perfect autumnal movie. With the leaves, and there's got like all the orange leaves on the floor, and you've got detectives and they're trying to work out what's happened. There's been a murder, it's cozy. You cannot tell me there is a better time in the year to read a murder mystery than in autumn. There is no better time. It's probably the only time I want to read a murder mystery so bad. And this one is one of the good ones. So Avery, who is just a very, very broke woman, or girl I should even say, and she is living her life with her sister, and one day she finds out that she's inherited billions and billions and estates and businesses from a man that she's never met, and she doesn't know why, but when she gets there, the whole family have kind of been shunned and they're not in the will, and she's like, oh no. Obviously they hate her, but the one condition is that she has to live in the house for a year with the family, or mainly the 3 grandchildren of this man. There's a lot of things in this, like there's like a love triangle and romance, and if that's your cup of tea, great. But most thing I love about this book is the puzzles. This is such a puzzle based story. The man who left Avery all this money was like incessant with his family about being the puzzle, and now Avery might be the puzzle that is needing to be solved. It's just such a good book, and the vibes are there. The dark, dreary like situation she's in, the house, it just feels so, it's like a haunted house, but without, obviously it's not haunted in the book, but I mean, like, it gives me those vibes. The big estate, the like grounds of the grounds of the manor. Oh, I just love it all. And then on the same vein, we have Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. Again, the whole series, but not the last one. We don't like the last one. This is probably better than the Inheritance Games as a YA mystery, and this is even more autumnal because we're set in like this boarding school where murders have happened in the past and a murder is happening now, and kidnappings, or not murders, a kidnapping and a missing person. Our protagonist Stevie has come to solve the mystery of these missing people, and the murder of a young girl that happened many years ago, and while she's here, another murder happens, or another death happens. Is it murder? Who knows? And so Stevie wants to work it out, and it's just so lovely. Like, you can see a map in here of the grounds of A.M Academy. It's a small map, but you can just see where I'm coming from. You can just see it. It's a vast, gothic, old-time building. You've got the 2 timelines. You see a lot of like the past, and for some reason the past just gives me autumn. I'm one of those people that, like, in the autumn I like to go to all those National Trust houses. I'm going to one in a couple of weeks, and I just like to go into the houses, into the manors. I don't know what it is about autumn that gives me those things. I just love it, and this is one of those books that just gives me that feeling in book format. Again, kind of Knives Out vibes, not really, nothing like the Inheritance Games, but it has similar like vibes to it, and I just absolutely love this series. This is my favourite YA mystery series. I think it's just my favourite mystery series ever. So good, so fascinating, and if you don't fall in love with Stevie, what are you doing? So good. And there's a 3-book series, and then there's another one that's kind of in the same series, and then we have another one coming out next year, I think. So something that would be perfect timing to get your teeth stuck into if you haven't already. I mean, these are all very popular books so far, so you might have already read them. Next we have something I literally just read, and that is Beneath the Stairs by Jennifer Fawcett. Initially I wasn't sure on my like feelings on this book, and I was like 2.75, but I'm sitting with a 4 here. This is a very good book, and I would say very autumny because of it, the fact it's horror. Like, I like my autumn vibe books, but I also like a bit of horror in the autumn, you know, coming up to Halloween. It's spooky season. I want some scary horror, and this is one of those books. This is jam-packed, to the point of maybe too much jam-packed, of ghosts, horror moments, scary things, murders, missing children, past timelines, present timelines, people going through scary things, hospitalizations. It is jam-packed, this book. And to the point where, like, I was so confused and overwhelmed, and that's why I didn't get a 5-star. But it's such a good book with such a good story. I really like the revelation. I haven't even told you what it's about. So, I mean, one main-ish timeline is our protagonist, Claire. She, as a child, went in with a few of her friends to the Octagon House. And one of her friends, Abby, while she was there, gets stuck or put in the basement and swears she sees something. Abby then gets on a really long track of drug abuse because of the trauma, and she ends up trying to commit suicide in the basement of this house and ends up in a coma. Now Claire is trying to uncover the mystery of what has made her go back to this house in order to do this, and Claire is wondering maybe it wasn't a suicide, but everybody around her is trying to convince her the fact that Abby had a problem with drug abuse, so it probably was. That is a very small part of this book. That is like the main storyline, I guess. But truly, there are so many characters in this, so many families, past and present, so much history to the Octagon House. And it is such a creepy book. I wish more of it had been set inside the house, But I definitely love this. This isn't even a review and I'm still going on about it. But I think that autumn vibes, if you're looking for a horror for spooky season, not just like cute falling leaves that are brown, I think you'd really enjoy this as a spooky season read. So good, so scary, but has like a lot of plot to it. Where should we go next? Let's go to one of my favourite books of all time, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Now, again, I'm sure a lot of you have read this, and if you have read this, you probably know why it's an autumnal read. Well, our unnamed protagonist marries Mr. De Winter, and when she moves into the house, she finds that the house is haunted in a way, not physically by ghosts, but haunted in like a sense of history by Rebecca, who is the previous Mrs. De Winter. And everything that our unnamed protagonist does is overshadowed by Rebecca and what she did in the house and everybody's love for her. But Rebecca went missing, and so there's kind of like a murder mystery element to it as well. What's happened? Why is Rebecca so present in the house? There's like a housekeeper that is definitely in love with Rebecca, even if it's not said. I'm sorry, she is. It was so good, and I think, again, those gothic murder mystery vibes is what makes this autumnal to me. I don't know when it's actually set, I can't remember, but I'm due a reread of this season, I think. I love this. First of all, if you're worried that this is a classic and you're not a classics reader, let me just try and convince you that this is so accessible. You will hopefully, I think, be okay reading this, because I'm not very good with classic writing. I really struggle with it, but this was so accessible, and the first like classic that I've ever fallen in love with. And since this, I've read more of Daphne du Maurier, and I would agree that's the case with all of her books. But I think that the dark dreariness of the house and the monotony of our unnamed protagonist's life is just so it's such a good mixture of spooky, because there are spooky moments in this book that give you that spooky season feel, but you also have these beautiful gardens that our unnamed protagonist walks around and talks about, and the darkness of the house because it's old, and then the mystery element. And then there's kind of like it's a thriller, so there's like a lot of thrillery elements. I just really, really like this book. And I definitely think if you were to read it, this would be the perfect time. This, or maybe you could go into winter, but I would definitely say autumn, not the summer. Do not read this in the summer. You will not get the same enjoyment out of it. Reading is dependent on the season. I am a true believer. If you have not read this, you are missing out, no matter what the season. So just read it, please. I love it. Again, I have another full series recommendation, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan Mcguire. Now, there are a few of these books that I would say are better to read in the summer, but for the most part, like this one and In an Absent Dream and Down Among the Sticks and Bones, they're all very dark books. I absolutely love that these books are kind of like, they read like middle grade, but they're not. They're definitely too much for middle grade age. They're spooky and scary. I love these. They are so interesting and fascinating, and each one is so short and set in a different world, but you get so much out of it. And the characters that we follow in most of these books I absolutely adore, but especially this first one, Every Heart a Doorway. A lot of these worlds are set in forests, like In an Absent Dream, and I haven't read this particular one in ages, but I think I'm due a reread this season of trying to get through these, because they're just so good. They're super short, so I feel like there's no excuse. If you don't know what this series is about, we follow Eleanor West's School for Children, where these are children who have gone through a doorway in their lives and have gone to a different world, like a fantastical world. You can either go to a world of logic or a world of something else. I can't remember, it's logic or nonsense. Nonsense worlds or logic worlds. And when you come back, you feel out of place. You've lived in a whole different world with different rules. And these kids are struggling, and their parents bring them to these homes because they think they're kind of like having like a bit of a mental break, because they don't think it's real, obviously. But then they're in this home, and some of the children don't get to go back, some of them do. You see some of their stories, you see some of their worlds. Wow. Such an imaginative, creative series. Again, some of them better in the summer, but for most part, I would say really, really good for autumn. Again, an easy one to fly through. Perfect to catch up on a cold night with a cup of hot chocolate, your fireplace on, or if you haven't got a fireplace like me, your ASMR on YouTube of a fireplace, and read one of these. You can't convince me that there's anything better on this earth. So next we have The Diviners by Libba Bray. I suppose you could say full series recommendation, but probably not. I just like this one. The rest of the series is a little bit of a letdown. This is like a historical YA, I would say horror, to be honest. I don't know what it's actually considered. But we follow Evie O'Neill, who gets shipped off to New York by her parents because she's like unreasonable. They can't keep a hold of her, so she goes to live with her uncle, who owns the Museum of Supernatural Things or something like that. And yeah, we're in New York in 1926. Her and a group of friends that she meets there, who are great. I absolutely love these group. They uncover like a supernatural mystery, and this mystery goes through all of the books, but there's also a bit of like individualism between each book, especially this one. I would say these are super creepy. Now, the audiobook is what I would recommend for these, and again, is super, super creepy. But I absolutely love this series. Like, you can just see from the beginning, like the first page, creepy. The opening scene, so creepy. I love it. So again, kind of going on to the spooky season vibes of it. If I have time to reread this series this season, I will do so because I'm really excited about it and I love it. This first book. The rest of them, not so much. But, you know, you might like it. But I definitely recommend this first one. I really like every single character in this book. They're so well developed. Evie is so annoying, but so lovable at the same time. Like, half the time you want to punch her and the other half you want to hug her. Okay, the next two. I'm doubtful of the fact that they're probably autumn vibes, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The first one is Circe by Madeline Miller. This is a Greek mythology retelling of Circe, who gets banished to her own island by her father, and she is forced to live there, isolation for the rest of her life or existence. I can't remember. Is she immortal? I don't remember. This is a heartbreaking story. So sad, so slow paced. Like, this will not be a quick read for you. This will take a time, but it's so beautiful. The reason I love this book, and I think that it has for me autumnal vibes again, is because of the island setting. The fact that she's on this island with the animals and the nature. I don't even think it's set, like, it's set over years and years and years of time, so you get to see every season really. But I just feel like this resonates with me so much in autumn. And I feel like the cover is very autumny as well, because like, look at those leaves and the colour, it gives autumn. But I just think there's something about reading about nature and the island and like self-sufficiency, and then there's like some journeys in this book and other characters and some like other mythology creatures come into it. I just think this is a good book to read any time of year, to be honest. It would fit any season. But if you haven't read it yet and you have it on your TBR or you're interested in picking it up, I would definitely recommend picking it up in the next 2 or 3 months, because I think that would be the perfect time to read it, if there is such a thing. Very good, very interesting. But again, just read it any time of year if you haven't already, because this book deserves it. And then my last recommendation again is kind of the same thing. You could read it at any time of year, but for some reason it's giving me autumn. And that is Zodiac Academy, the entire series by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. Oh, we all know I love this series. I'm not going to shut up about it, and you're all probably sick of hearing me talk about it by now. We are set in a boarding school with magical creatures, dragons, sirens, Pegasus, witches. Have we got witches? I can't remember. I don't know. Dragons. Oh gosh, the list is endless, honestly. The list is actually endless. Werewolves. Anything you can think of is in this book. Very, very good. Absolutely love this series. I feel like the first one's a bit of like, it's definitely got first book syndrome, but keep going. I hope you'll fall in love with it the way I did. I am again not sure why this gives me autumn. The only justification I can give for this is because I started it last autumn, and I feel like there's something about when you have less plans in the autumn, well, I do personally, like I feel like I'm busy all summer and then I'm settling into my favourite season, winter. So that's when I'm too busy doing all the fun Christmas activities. So autumn is where I love to just stay at home, which is my favourite thing to do. I just want to stay at home and read. I want to do nothing else. And I think this is the perfect bingeable series to do that with. It kind of sucks you in. Like I always said, like when I'm reading this series, there's something about it that makes me feel like I'm actually present. I am there. I am experiencing that with the characters. I am a character in this book. It's wild to me, because I've never really had books make me feel quite like that before. So this is a very impressive book series to me. And again, I couldn't give you a definitive reason for the autumn. I just think it's a good time to read it because if you're anything like me, you want to sit down, you want to read, and you can just keep binging them. If you have Kindle Unlimited, like I did last year, I just kept going, right, okay, finish, next book straight away. Just didn't move from my spot, just next book. And I just kept going and going and going, and these are so long. This one isn't. But they go upwards of like 700 to 800 pages, be warned. And you just keep going. They're just bingeable. The fact that I haven't finished the series yet does go against that fact. But that's because it's too heartbreaking to do so. But yeah, for some reason, I felt like this had to be on this list. Can't give you more of a reason for that. So that is my autumn recommendations for you. I hope that this made some sort of sense, to be honest. Like, it's hard to describe why things give you the vibe they give you, but they did. If there's any of these that you plan on reading this season, let me know. What are your autumn recommendations? Because I want to know what I should pick up. But yeah, that is everything for this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye.